Get notifications and stay updated every time I post a challenge podcast by hitting the subscribe button. Thank you all and hope you enjoy. Welcome back, everybody. And we got another episode today. My guest today, he just departed from your screens this past Wednesday, but he won't be departing today because he's on this screen, Mr. Lio Rush. What's up, man?
What's up, Mike? How you doing, man?
How are you doing, man? More specifically, how are you kind of dealing with like maybe the not backlash, but like how the episode was perceived? Because I'd say that a lot of people after seeing it were pretty moved and inspired by you kind of being out in the open with what you're dealing with.
Yeah, man. It's super. It's I won't say it's weird because it's not the first time that I'm dealing with my own emotions and stuff like that. It's just different. It's very different to watch myself on TV in such a vulnerable state. Usually I'm watching myself on TV when I'm at my most comfortable. With wrestling, but it's just an entirely different ball game. When I'm looking at myself, I'm seeing myself on TV. I'm clearly uncomfortable. I'm clearly, I can see myself, stressed out and depressed and, going through some pretty real life things. And it's strange, but I'm glad, like you said, like it's been perceived so well. A lot of people have been giving me a lot of love and words of encouragement and stuff like that. It's really cool to see somebody talk about your actual character instead of your wrestling persona. So this is cool.
Yeah, and for sure, I definitely want to talk a little bit more about it, like as this progresses. But I just want to say, man, like I really appreciated you coming out and saying that because a big talking point on my podcast a lot is I like to drive home the point of like mental health awareness and such. I think that what you did was pretty inspiring and important because typically we see like whether it be wrestling or television entertainment in general, fans, just people that are watching the show oftentimes see like these larger than life titans on screen and think like they got everything going good up here. But they're also like human as well, right? So I think that for them to see like someone of like your, stature of being on TV, like you're elevated, right? To see someone like you kind of come out and kind of talk about and raise awareness to that is like really special and important, I felt.
Yeah. It's a difficult thing, especially coming from the world of professional wrestling, where you are seeing these guys who are supposed to be like these like superheroes compared to the everyday casual wrestling fan. And I can't really imagine it because I don't really know of too many wrestlers out there who speak on mental health as much as I do. I know they have their own things going on in their personal lives and stuff like that, but I'm never. I just don't see it. I don't see it. And I can't imagine, being a fan and looking at somebody who you see as this mentally and physically tough guy and nothing ever goes wrong and nothing happens and they have everything figured out and stuff like that. And to see them kind of, like break down and open up and say, I'm not okay. I'm not okay in this environment. I know my limits. I know what could possibly happen if I got to that point. Um, and even for me, I'm still learning, about this. I'm still coping with my feelings and my emotions and stuff like that, and just trying to figure everything out. And I thought it was pretty cool to watch it back and see that I've gotten to a point where, okay, now I can recognize and I can realize when I'm in a position where I have to kind of say, okay, maybe it's time to back up a little bit, and maybe it's time to, reevaluate the situation that I'm in and kind of dial it back so I can be okay. So Yeah. It was cool for me to see me go through that process.
And did this thing kind of like, for you at least, was this like building gradually, or was it just like what we saw on screen, like that split moment, like something just like clicked and you, like a switch or something, and you just knew like it was time? Or did you feel like throughout the entire process, like weeks on weeks, like it had been building up, or was it just split?
I saw it maybe about a week and a half before that moment happened. It's crazy what doesn't get shown on TV. But it wasn't so fast like that. It definitely was a gradual thing. It was slow, but it didn't just happen over a day. I was thinking about it, and I kind of talked about it a little bit with my partner Gabby. Um, and I think the more the days went on, the harder it got, and it wasn't like there was something so drastic that happened in the house that made me like, oh my gosh, I need to get out of here. I just think over time, I just started seeing like little things, and it started to be like, oh, I can see where this is going, and you know, it was starting to get a little bit uncomfortable. And then I remember waking up that day before we even started filming. I woke up super early in the morning, wide awake, just still laying in my bed, and I was like, "Yeah, I think today's the day where I have to leave." So I told the people who I needed to tell, and that's what made me get to that decision.
So what exactly was it, that, because I know you talked about, like your childhood and growing up, how you had, you were used to being in a house with strangers. Could you maybe walk me through that a little bit, like what you growing up was like with, what you had talked about on the show?
Yeah. So I think my life took a drastic change when I was about like around 10 or 11. I grew up with four sisters, all in the same house, with both of my parents. Um, I had the best relationship with my dad. I had the best relationships with my sisters. I was playing sports, and like the best, like one of the best childhoods like you can ever like imagine. And then things started to hit the fan a little bit. My sisters were getting older. They were developing their own kind of personalities and way of thinking, and how they wanted to live their life, and that created like some tension with my parents. People started getting kicked out, thrown out the house. Um, then I started to get older myself. I'm starting to become a teenager. Already had that friction with my sisters that I saw, and I started to develop some tension with my dad. Uh, and it got to a point where, um, there was a lot of disagreements and physical fights with my dad, and protecting my mom from seeing some arguments that I just didn't like. I didn't like hearing my dad talk to my mom like that. I didn't like seeing my mom cry. So a lot of the time was me kind of defending my sisters, defending my mom, which led to a lot of altercations with my dad. And then ultimately, my sisters that were still there, and my mom ended up leaving the house. And we didn't have anywhere to go. We didn't have family members to uh, to sleep at. I mean, it would be one story if it was one or two people, but when you're having like three or four people trying to stay at somebody's house, that can only last but so long. So we jumped from family member's house to family member's house, and then eventually we ran out of family members, and the only place we had to go was a group home. And yeah, that was very strange, living in a group home with my mom and my sisters, in a house where there was also other families and other strangers, and it was just weird. It was a lot to to get used to. I don't think I ever got used to it. I mean, if I did get used to it, I probably wouldn't have left the challenge house.
Yeah.
But and that wasn't the only thing that I've gone through that was somewhat of a trigger for me in the house. That was just one of the many reasons of why I left the house, or why I felt like I needed to leave the house, just because that was a very traumatic time in my life where I felt hopeless, and I didn't feel like I had another way out. So yeah, being in a house with 30 strangers wasn't the best. And obviously I knew that was going to be the case. I knew that was going to be the position that I was in. I just didn't think, the last time I felt that I was 12,
Yeah.
26 now. I thought that I would have gotten over that by now. But being back in a situation like that, it just kind of brought back all of these emotions. And there was just no way I could focus on the game. I was just always thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm like a 13-year-old kid again. So yeah, it was weird.
No, I can't even imagine, and I'm sure people listening to this, like, nobody could probably, or for the most part, attest to like where you're coming from. And I appreciate you sharing these stories. Do you have maybe any advice for people that are going through like some things with their mental health, and they feel like they got nothing to turn to, like no outlet to kind of cope with this kind of
Yeah, I think, and I'm like I said, I'm still figuring things out myself, and I'm still going through the motions and stuff like that. But I think the biggest thing that I'm starting to realize is, just like communication is like the biggest thing. There's so many people in the world right now, or not even just right now, just in the world that go through mental health, um, whether that's PTSD, whether that's anxiety, whether that's depression. There's so many people out there that go through what you're going through, although the circumstances might be different. Those feelings are still there, and I feel like there's a community there, and if you open up and you talk to someone, I feel like just simply talking to somebody can help so much, because you never know what somebody else is going through and how you can relate to their story, or whatever the case may be. And also, I literally just made a post about this, but I'm about 50-50 on like social media, as far as where I see like the pros and the cons and stuff like that. But I think the biggest, pro of it all is it kind of allows you to see into other people's lives in a sense. You can see if somebody else is talking about their mental health. You can see if someone is going through some similar things that you're going through, and you can also ask for help. You can also like open up and say, you know I'm going through this, and I don't know what else to do. There's so many people out there that are willing to help, that are willing to listen, and that's the biggest help that I feel like anyone could really ask for, because a lot of people that go through mental health illness, they think that they're alone. And for me, to just have somebody who can listen, that can have that time for me to just listen and hear, what I'm going through is the biggest help, because sometimes I feel like I can't talk to anybody, and that's how emotions get bottled up, and that's how things unfortunately go wrong. Um, but yeah, I feel like just being you know authentic with yourself, being real with yourself, realizing the emotions and what you're going through, and processing that, and being able to uh, you know recognize that there are some things going on, and asking for help is a pretty big pro with social media and in my eyes. So
Right. I think that social media is a very big double-edged sword because it comes with a lot of positives and a lot of negatives. Like some positives is like we might have not or definitely didn't have what we have now at our disposal with social
Yeah.
media, maybe even like, 15, 10 years ago that what we have now. But at the same time, like, for instance, if I'm like logging into Twitter and then you just see like a whole bunch of negative stuff, like I feel like if you have positive energy and then like just to even like take the initiative to like even observe negative energy, like you're bringing it onto yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like this is actually my first pod that I'm doing. I took a month break on Twitter, I announced, because I was trying to get myself right, and I think it's kind of fitting that I'm having you here as my guest. Seeing as how you just came out and talked about what you were dealing with. Yeah, I feel like sometimes limiting social media is almost in a way like my safe space. So I really it really helps me a lot to limit my social media and kind of like, find other outlets, maybe if it's like reading, working out, like stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I have heard through the grapevine that you actually wrote a rap and you rapped to the house when you
Yeah.
left. Can you confirm or deny that?
Yeah, I did. I wrote a little something for the house just because I felt like in that in that time I felt like I couldn't really, you know, open up and say what was really, on my mind. I didn't really know how to communicate to a house full of strangers that were competing for $1 million. I didn't know how to turn the game off and talk to them just as people. And it was rough for me. So, I took a different approach, and I'm a recording artist. Back here at home, I know they didn't really talk much about it while I was on the show, but I felt comfortable writing something and kind of expressing myself that way rather than just opening up my heart. I kind of wanted to do it as a little bit of a performance, and it wasn't really a performance. It was just more so me kind of expressing how I felt in a way that I felt a little bit more comfortable. So yeah, I did ended up writing something for the house, and I think a lot of people didn't realize what was happening until the very end of it, and that's when people were like, "Oh shit, okay, this is serious," and he's probably leaving after this. So.
Did they get that on camera? Because a lot of people were wondering like why that wasn't shown.
Yeah, I think that yeah, there were cameras there. There were cameras there. And that was also a big thing that, I was a little afraid. I almost didn't watch that episode just because I didn't really know. I was watching the show and I was seeing how they, perceived other people and how people got written off the show and stuff like that. And a lot of, like I said, it's very surprising to me what they don't put on TV. So I was just thinking in my head like, oh man, how are they gonna put together me like leaving the show, and what are people gonna say, because I didn't know what people said after I left. So I didn't know what people were gonna say like on the internet. So I just kind of wanted to just kind of lock myself in a room and just not watch the episode at all. Probably get off social media for like a couple of weeks. But my wife encouraged me to, like watch it and just see, what the outcome of it all was going to be. And I'm glad that I did watch it. So.
For sure, for sure. But now I want to, leave that to the side and bookmark that and kind of now take it back a ways to pre-challenge, and we'll get, leading up to how the challenge came about, obviously.
For sure.
Because obviously 2020 was kind of a crazy year, to put it lightly, for a lot of people. I want to ask you, because you obviously had kind of your untimely release, if you will, from WWE, and then a few months later, you go to film the challenge. But what kind of happened in between that? Because you kind of strike me as a guy who's like a jack of all trades, like you're always up and moving. So what was going on in between that little nucleus between the WWE release to the challenge?
A lot of uncertainty. I didn't know. I had no idea what was going to be next for me. It was it was it was such a shock. You know, and it wasn't more so the shock of just being away from WWE, just not being in WWE anymore. But I think it was the combination of not being at my dream job anymore, on top of a global pandemic happening at the same time. So I didn't know what else to really do. So I just felt stuck. Um, and like you said, like I do other things, but so much was like shut down, and I had things booked, but things were canceling like rapid fire, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is literally a nightmare. This is an actual nightmare right now. I felt like the world was ending. And then I just ended up getting like a random email, like an email that looked like a spam email, like I would have just threw it in the trash. And I ended up, opening it up, and there was someone from MTV saying that they saw that I got released recently from WWE, and if I was interested in being a part of a reality TV show on MTV called The Challenge. And I didn't know what the challenge was. They sent me a link, and they were like, "Hey, if you don't know what the challenge is, here's a couple of links for you to watch." And I click on the link, and I'm like, "Holy shit, this is like Real World Road Rules. Like this is what the Miz was on, but they just like changed the name." So when they just said The Challenge, I was like, "What is The Challenge?" And then I ended up seeing, that this was a show that's been on MTV for years that I used to watch when I was younger with my sister. So it was pretty cool. And then obviously, once I said yeah, I ended up watching all of the seasons before, and I was just like, man, this is really cool, and it's just crazy, you know, literally a blessing. Like just literally saved everything. Put my confidence back to where it needed to be, because I was, who knows what I would have been doing if the challenge didn't email me.
Right. And you mentioned Real World Road Rules. That was always kind of like until a couple years ago, pretty much like before they both went extinct. That was pretty much all they were pulling from, right? So then, and sometimes fans of the challenge are a little scared of change. So when, from what I've saw on like social media, when you were initially revealed that you're going to be on the cast, everyone saw WWE and they're like, "What's going on?" Like they're thrown through. They also saw Joseph was from America's Got Talent, so they were all like speculating, is this going to be like some type of like MTV versus like Outsiders kind of like format here?
Yeah.
But little known fact, because I've actually talked on here a bunch of times, kind of like what I'm like gearing towards is covering like pro football. But one thing I've never talked about on here is actually my first love was professional wrestling, mainly WWE, in terms of like what I watched. Like I remember being like in diapers, having like my Hulk Hogan action figures, like
Nice.
playing with those. Like I was playing like the old SmackDown versus Raw video games. Like I was actually like 4 years old watching like the early Ruthless Aggression era / like late Attitude Era. So like all that stuff was like really what got me into like competitive like nature, watching and then wanting to later, get involved in it. I remember I was on the wrestling team too. My very first practice, I get there and they had like one of those mats, like like how they have like those like mats like for like the wrestling teams, like the flat. They had one of them rolled up in the corner, and I remember I was like probably like 6 or 7. I go and stand on one of them, and I go to try and do like a flying elbow to one of the kids. And the coach runs over. He's like, no, 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 this isn't the type of wrestling you see on TV.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but now that kind of leads me into my point with you. What was there any particular event for you that like made you say like, I think I want to do this? Or did you just like kind of develop this from like, slowly watching? Like, how did this come about for you that you decide you want to become a wrestler?
Yeah, I was a fan of wrestling since I was about 5 years old. I remember like just, and it's crazy that I can remember this, but I remember sitting in my living room with my sisters, and they were randomly turning through like TV channels, and they like stopped on like wrestling, and I didn't know what it was my first time watching it, and I was like, this is absolutely crazy, but it looks fun. Like it's just guys like wrestling in a ring with these crazy costumes on, and there's a whole bunch of people like in the crowd, cheering for him and stuff like that. And I just kind of started watching wrestling ever since then. But it wasn't until uh, I was about 10. I think I was about 10 or 11, and I ended up going to my first wrestling show. It was in Washington D.C. It was called SummerSlam, and I remember watching that show live, and I was like, man, like I want to be the one in the ring. Like I want to actually be one of the wrestlers instead of sitting in the crowd. So I tried to do everything that I could. I was like looking up wrestling schools and just trying to see how I can become a professional wrestler. And when I turned 18, I saw that there was a professional wrestling school in my state, and I ended up signing up. And I was an independent wrestler, just like on the independent circuit for about a year and a half. I ended up getting signed to a different television company that wasn't WWE, called Ring of Honor. And then from there, I went back on the independent scene for about a year. And then I ended up getting an email from a talent relations scout for the WWE. And they said that they wanted to call me and see if I was interested in being signed to the WWE. And I ended up getting signed at 22 years old.
Wow, so your come up was pretty fast track then, you'd say, right?
Yeah. It definitely was. But that came from, you know, I was living, eating, breathing, sleeping, wrestling literally every single day. There wasn't a moment where I wasn't in the ring training. There wasn't a moment that I wasn't on my computer writing up emails, just trying to get myself booked at every single show that I could. I would hop in cars with other wrestlers and go to shows that I wasn't even a part of and just introduce myself. It was a lot of hard work to get to, where I got in WWE at 22. And, even with the matches that I did have on the independent circuit, I gave it my all. I damn near killed myself in the ring every single time to try to, get people talking on social media. And, that thankfully, grabbed the attention of some people that were pretty important up at WWE.
So I'm sorry, I don't know if I missed it or not. Was Ring of Honor your first promotion that you worked for, or was there one before that?
Well, that was my first televised promotion that I
Okay.
worked for. Yeah, all of the other promotions that I worked for were just independent shows that might have got streamed live on some different like streaming websites and like YouTube and stuff like that before Fight TV was like such a big thing now. So yeah.
Did you have like any particular wrestlers like when you were maybe younger or in your teenage years like that you would watch and like maybe had like admiration for in a way?
Yeah, I loved all of the guys that were as small as me. But crazy thing, when I got signed to WWE, and some of those guys that I used to watch when I was younger were still there in WWE. And when I met them in person, I realized that these guys that I thought were small weren't small at all. So yeah, the smallest people there that I thought were small were like 6 feet tall, and I'm over here at 5'6". I think the smallest person that was smaller than me is Rey Mysterio. I think he's like 5'2", 5'3".
Wow.
But Yeah, I used to watch guys like Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle, Jeff Hardy, to Jerry, like so many like great, like cruiserweight type guys. So yeah,
That was like the golden era of like SmackDown. Those guys
yeah,
that you like.
yes, it was.
So we just talked about you being a wrestler, obviously, but like the work that I really took a liking to and was entertained by was I really enjoyed your run managing Bobby Lashley. Like, did you know that you had that in you to kind of be like a hype man in a way, sort of like an MC type role that you see for DJs out at like spring breaks and such? That was kind of like the role you were filling with Bobby Lashley in a way. Did you think that you had that in you to be like have a
Um,
personality too?
I didn't. I honestly, I did not. I was just so excited and pumped up for the opportunity that I had that I was going to do every single thing in my power to try to make it work. So, you know, I would cut these promos on social media and just like upload them like every day, just to get people used to me talking and just try to get them used to me being like a character and not just like a random like athlete talking like in an interview. Like I wanted to be a personality. I wanted to be like a character. So I used social media as practice before I would, get on television every Monday and do the real deal. So no, I didn't think I had it in me. But and I just wasn't expecting it, I don't think any kid really grows up watching wrestling and saying, "Oh, I want to be a manager." Like they always want to be a wrestler. So, when I got presented that opportunity, I was like, "Oh wow, this is not what I was ready for. I wasn't prepared for this at all." But I'm glad that that went the way that it did because I feel like honestly, if it wasn't for that, I don't think that my name, the Lio Rush name, I don't think it would be uh, a household name in wrestling the way that it is now. If it wasn't for me being a manager.
Yeah, and I thought about this too. Do you feel like more or less like your managing type role is what maybe caught MTV's eye? Because obviously, I mean, it's easy to look at like a wrestler and be like, well, they're athletic, they're good at this, they're good at that, right? Because it's obviously a competition show, but there's obviously another aspect to it, which is the reality, how you interact with people. Do you feel like that was maybe what caught their eye? They saw like maybe your funny bits that you were doing.
I think so, for sure. I think that's what they look for. They look for well, at least I feel like they look for personalities. They look to see, what personalities are going to clash with other people's, personalities. So I definitely think, I don't think it was really my athleticism that, caught their eye and said, "Oh, we need to put him on here." I mean, I'm sure it helped, but I don't think it was the selling point to get me onto the actual show.
But do you feel like it helped you like personally? Because obviously WWE, in a way, or just wrestling in general, you need to like have like you have like your personas, your gimmicks, right? And the challenge sometimes, or more most of the time, is kind of like how you can deceive people and how you talk and make alliances with people around the house. Do you feel like maybe that in a way helped you and prepared you for coming into an environment like that?
Not necessarily the managing stuff, but I do think being in WWE helped me with the political game and the challenge. Wrestling, or at least WWE, is a very, very it's a brutal business to be a part of. There's a lot of egos. There's a lot of ass kissing. There's a lot of uh, things that kind of question people's morals and standards and stuff like that. And you got to learn how to navigate through all of the craziness. Because of course, if wrestling was easy, everybody would be doing it. And anybody can train in the ring to try to be a wrestler. But I don't think a lot of people are prepared for or even recognize that there's an entirely different part of professional wrestling that isn't shown on TV. And that's the backstage politics. And it's a bitch. It sucks. So I definitely think it helped me with the political game and the challenge.
Well, now let's fast forward back to, your first head into the challenge. Obviously, they're sending you guys to quarantine leading up to the challenge, of course. So you get there, and of course, people are going to be kind of like sizing people up, feeling people out. What did you feel like the first impressions and vibes that you were getting off from people? Like, I'm sure you guys maybe had some interactions and people asked like, "Oh, what show are you from?" or like, "Where'd you come from?" Like, how did that kind of go down for you when you first met up with everybody?
It was cool. I think watching back on all of the seasons before and seeing the season that I was a part of now, I definitely feel like it was the most friendly I've seen. First starting out, I think the vets were super welcoming to the rookies, kind of like right away, um, in a personal sense. Uh, and everybody got along like super, super great. People were excited to hear about other people's backgrounds. Of course, when I said that I was a professional wrestler, people wanted me to teach them how to do like wrestling moves and stuff like that. And they were asking me a bunch of like wrestling questions and like who I met and who I've like wrestled before. So it was pretty cool. I mean, everybody in that house was super fun to be around. I don't know. It was a very different experience because like I said, like you have all of these cool, unique people and everybody's getting along great. And then as soon as the rules are announced for the game, everybody's just going batshit crazy and arguing and yelling and wanting to fight and everybody's competing for $1 million and it's like actual real money that can change somebody's life. So it's like, all right, friendships are out of the out of the window. Whatever we just talked about doesn't even matter anymore because if I see you in an elimination, I'm gonna have to kick your ass. So like it's fun. It's all fun and games, but it was I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the house that I was part of.
Right, and we talked about the rookies. There was probably, I mean, for as far as I can remember in recent memory at least, we've had an overwhelming amount of rookies on this season that we've had in like the last few go-rounds. Did that kind of contribute to you and Gabby partnering up? Because obviously you guys are scrambling around at the last second. Some vets are going to know this person from this prior season, who's good at what, and obviously how did you and Gabby decide to partner up? Were you guys just kind of like looking around and then just so happened that that's how it went down? Or
Yeah, there was no strategy in that whatsoever. I think for the most part, the way that we had to pick our partners, it was so random. I remember TJ just said, "You guys are going to be in pairs today. Pick your partner right now." And everybody was just like, "Wait, what? What's going on?" And of course, like the vets, they knew each other already, so they were like, "Okay, come here. I got you. I got you." But like us rookies, we had no idea who to pick. Like we didn't know if we could even go up to a vet and be like, "Hey, you want to be partners?" Because they don't know us and we don't know them. So a lot of the rookies were kind of just looking around and didn't know what to do. I think it literally came down to me and Gabby were the two slowest people to try to grab somebody, and we saw that we were both standing there alone, and we were like, "Want to be partners? All right, come on." So that was literally how that went. I don't even think I talked to Gabby before I decided to be a partner with her. So yeah, it was pretty crazy.
one thing I will say though is like the trend of like the rookies being the sacrificial lamb got like completely debunked this season. Like not only just me, but I've seen general consensus. People are like very pleasantly surprised by how much the rookies have stepped up and kind of just like, all right, I'm not going to take your shit this season from like the vets. And I feel like you, my friend, kind of like started that trend with kind of how you bucked up to CT on episode 1. Do you feel like that's maybe what, kind of got people to maybe, if they didn't take you seriously before, like started to take you seriously?
Yeah, I think that moment right there is what set the tone for the whole season. I think a lot of people were hearing that I was a professional wrestler, but they also saw that I was a smaller guy, so they thought that they could kind of, you know, test the waters a little bit and like try to push me around and see, what was going to come from it. I also think that's why MTV kind of chose me to be a part of the show, because there's some history of me kind of lashing out on social media against, some people in power up at WWE who decided that they wanted to try to treat me like a young boy, you know like a rookie that can just get pushed around like a lackey, and I just wasn't going for it. And I kind of well, I was glad that, in a sense, I got released from WWE because I didn't have to deal with that anymore. So it felt like a fresh start for me, in a sense, to be a part of the Challenge House. But once I got that feeling that I was getting kind of like pushed around a little bit, I was just like, oh no, this shit is not happening. Like if you're gonna come at me, you better believe I'm gonna come back like swinging, because I'm not one to excuse my language. I'm not one to fuck with. Like I'm not. So
I feel like you earned like your like badge of honor or something, because from the history of the show, like you could scan the whole history of CT on this show. Nobody's like usually like bucked up to him. It's usually piped down when CT's in the confrontation. So I mean, congrats, because you stepped up to the plate, and that kind of sparked everything in terms of like I feel like the rookies kind of playing like not a scared game for once. But another thing that I really liked, and I knew going into it that it wasn't gonna be like Darrell running away with this, because I want to talk about the kind of like the wrestling match on top of the what was it, the moving truck between you and Darrell,
yeah,
because Darrell's got a reputation for being like a no nonsense kind of like kick ass competitor, and he's been doing it for a while. So, but I knew obviously, because I kind of had like an upper leg on maybe some fans that didn't watch you in WWE, so I obviously knew like what you were capable and such. And I was like seeing this matchup, I'm like, this is gonna be interesting. So I want to ask you kind of how was that wrestling match with Darrell like? Because that looked like looked pretty solid watching it.
it was difficult. It was just awkward, and I think to explain that entire, or to describe that entire challenge, it was a very awkward scenario. It's like as soon as TJ announced that we were going to be wrestling on top of a truck, I was just like, "Oh hell yeah! This is like my wheelhouse right here. Like I'm gonna win this challenge." But then you got to think about, not only are you wrestling on top of a truck, that truck is going to be moving at 60 miles an hour. You don't have a harness on, and it's raining, and it's not. I don't know why I was thinking it was going to be like a wrestling mat, like a high school wrestling mat on top of the truck, but it was just solid wood.
Oh
So it
my god.
was it was super slippery. It was super unstable up there. I already knew that, Darrell had, what, like 40, 50 pounds on me maybe. So I was just like, there's no way I can stand up with this guy. I'm just going to lose my balance and he's going to fling me off of this truck. So I just tried to stay as low as I could, just try to keep my base strong enough that he couldn't take me off of the truck. And that's exactly what ended up happening. We ended up having like a stalemate on top of the truck. And I'll take that. I'll take a stalemate against like one of the strongest people in this game over getting embarrassed and getting chucked off of this truck.
No, but Darrell's also a Golden Gloves boxer too. So like he's
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
used to like close quarter combat, and I knew I was like, aside from obviously like CT and what was it, Fessy that went up against each other.
Yeah,
Aside from that, I'd say your guys' matchup was right on par with like the ones I was like pretty stoked to see. Not gonna lie.
for sure.
But now I gotta ask you, man, since this is a pretty polarizing topic amongst fans, it doesn't involve you, but obviously you were there. I want to ask you now where kind of your head was at in regards to the whole Fessy and Nelson situation with how that elimination unfolded. How do you feel like it was kind of dirty the way it went down, and do you feel like Fessy played a little, underhanded, or?
Yeah, man. See, I didn't really know much of the situation until people explained it to me. But it's just unfortunate because I think overall this is a very dirty game. And at some point, somebody is bound to get screwed over by somebody that they trust because there's only $1 million prize and only one person can get it. And when you're going into this game, uh, thinking that you have friends and thinking that you have people you can trust, and you can. It's very possible. But when you have those relationships that kind of trickle outside of the game, and you have those relationships in real life, it affects the relationship completely. You're actually screwing somebody over with money that could change somebody's life. So it's a 50-50 thing, man. Like Fessy seeing something down there and knowing that he could win and it could give him a skull and a ticket to the final. It's like, how can you pass that up? How can you give in a sense give somebody your $1 million? It's a very hard thing to do. But at the same time, that's like one of your closest friends outside of the house. And I honestly think that was, I don't know. Fessy is a bigger guy, and he's most likely to win another physical challenge in the game. So maybe to take that away from Nelson, I feel like was maybe yes, it was fucked up because you are a bigger guy and you could probably win a different physical challenge if it really came down to it. But I think maybe Fessy was being a little bit greedy. Maybe it was like it kind of gave him those memories of being like a football player again, and he wanted to that's how he wanted to get his gold skull. It just sucks that it had to be Nelson right there. Yeah, it was a very messy situation, very messy. I felt bad for Nelson, especially because that was how he went out in the prior season, and I just know, yeah, really bad, very bad. I'm glad I wasn't part of it, but yeah, it was crazy to witness.
Well, what about the actual like tactics itself during the elimination though, like the ripping
Oh
off the
yeah,
helmet? Did you think that was fucked up or?
no, for sure, for sure. That's
Because
ah
Fessy comes from football, and I played football most of my life as well. Obviously, like not at a pro level, but like throughout like college and such. Where that sport comes from, that's illegal, ripping a face mask off. So like, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
especially,
super dirty.
yeah. So I don't know. That just rubbed me the wrong way. But let me say this much: Nelson, he's a bull. Like what? He's got to
Yes,
be
he
like what?
is.
Like 5'9", 5'10", like 190, and he's like Fessy's, I believe 6'5", 250 at least,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
He definitely gave him a run for his money. Like Nelson is one tough dude. Like when I saw that, and even seeing the first round when he almost got Fessy, you know,
yeah,
uh, that was it was pretty intense to watch it. But nothing but respect for Nelson. I know I think his hand was kind of like jacked up before that challenge anyway.
yeah,
So
he had a dislocation in his finger.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, he's a tough dude.
Right, right. And I know it's kind of early to ask this since you just departed, but any maybe not aspirations, but would you be open to coming back in the future?
Hell yeah. I think I would definitely come back. I think now knowing, what this game is, having experienced it, because it's one thing to watch it and want to be a part of it, but it's a whole other thing to actually experience it and see what it is and what to expect. I think that's why a lot of people come back to the game year after year after year, because they know how to play the game. They know what to expect. They know when they're going to be able to call their family members. I was sitting in the house for weeks trying to figure out when am I going to be able to talk to my wife. And then when I did find out when I was going to be able to talk to my wife, and it was going to be like 2-3 weeks down the line, I couldn't tell my wife that I was going to talk to her in 3 weeks. So I knew she was sitting at home. We just moved to LA. She's pregnant. She's worried about me, not knowing when I was going to be able to talk to her, having to sit next to her phone 24/7 because she didn't know when it was going to be a phone call from me, being scared that she might have missed the phone call. So it was a lot. It was a lot to deal with, but I definitely will go back.
Right. I think a lot of people listening to this are going to be pretty stoked to hear that. Let's talk about now, kind of in closing, like what are some plans, or just in general, like what's coming up for Mr. Lio Rush? Like, I know you talked about your rap, and I know that a music video and song just got put out with fellow castmates Joseph and Jay as well. Feel free to share any upcoming projects and plans you might have for the rest of this year.
Yeah, like you said, that single came out with Joseph and Jay. I'm super glad that we were able to do that. It was cool to be able to hang out with some cast members outside of the house, so we can like actually see how we are, without the game. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, new single Stone Cold is out, and the music video. I've got tons of other projects that I'm working on. I'm about to start my own podcast with my wife pretty soon. I'm always working on my music. I've got my first film that's going to be starting to film soon, with the Legend of the White Dragon, which is a Power Ranger spinoff, like an origin story of the White Dragon. I'm always involved with wrestling, with my constant, shows and stuff like that. So there's so much, going on. I'm about to be a dad for the third time. Man, I'm all over the place, but I'm so happy and I'm so blessed that I've found myself in these situations where I have all these different opportunities, in the middle, or not even who knows at what point in the pandemic we're in. But I'm glad that I'm able to do as much as I'm doing while the pandemic is going on. So yeah.
Incredible to hear. And one thing you forgot to mention that's coming up, it's Royal Rumble season, man. For us wrestling fans, that lingo, it's a pretty big time. So,
yeah.
Do you have any plans to check in with the Rumble at all and see what happens, or you're just kind of indifferent to it?
I don't know, man. I might check it out. I might check it out. It's a pretty exciting and unpredictable time of the year. So I'm sure a lot of people are gonna enjoy it. I'm sure that I'm gonna enjoy it. It's gonna be fun. I'm sure. It always is. It's always a good time.
If I can compare the Royal Rumble to anything, here's what I would compare it to, because I know like it's easy to call WrestleMania the Super Bowl of the WWE, but I feel like that might not apply, because WrestleMania, you kind of have to be like all eyes like locked in to know like the story and like what led up to that point, right?
Yeah.
Like the climax. Whereas like I feel like if you don't watch wrestling for an extended period of time, you could just flip on the Royal Rumble and like it's like the butterflies and the rush of everything, like watching the Rumble match, like that feeling for as a wrestling fan. I don't think it compares to anything else, honestly, at the Rumble match. Like, no matter like where I am in my standing of watching it, like that's the one thing that would always like draw me in. I love a good Royal Rumble match.
For sure. Definitely, man.
But I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me today, man. I had a ton of fun chatting with you about a numerous number of topics. And if you need me to plug anything in the description or give any shout outs to anything else for you, I'm more than glad to do so as well. But thank you again for your time.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you so much, man.
All right, man. Take care.
Thank you.